Welcome back to another episode of Franchise Nutrition and Fitness Podcast. My name is Ryan. I'm a registered dietitian.
And I'm Matt. I'm a certified personal trainer and health coach, and we won't need to get into all the alphabet soup today, right? Because we're already getting to alphabet soup. But first,
if you haven't already, head on over to franchisenutritionandfitness.com, sign up for your free meet and greet. Click the Let's Get Started button at the top. It'll take you to the page to sign up for your free meet and greet. Or scroll out a little bit further down. You can use the contact us page to send any questions or comments about things you've heard on this podcast or other general nutrition and fitness questions that you have. We're happy to respond to them as quickly as we can. And then also, if you haven't already, go back and listen to all the other old episodes. There's a lot of them now.
Yeah, apparently we've been doing this for a while. Yeah, when you scroll through Spotify, I was doing that the other day. I was like, wow. And the fun thing about head trauma and just generally getting older, some of them I'm like, I don't remember this. This is new to me.
Yeah, I frequently cite old episodes in the show notes. And sometimes I have to go back and dig and be like, which one was it that we said this on? Luckily, I have all the show notes in a saved document, so I can just use the Control F feature. But the thing that we're talking about today is something that I feel like comes up a lot or that people misuse a lot.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little alphabet soup, a few of the acronyms you find in fitness and nutrition. And I know we selectively picked out some, and there's so many out there. Like you read any article from any bro science magazine or anything, and it's going to utilize so many of those different acronyms. And it's always kind of the flavor of the month to sound like you know what you're talking about if you're throwing out a bunch of fitness and nutrition acronyms. So let's decipher what some of them mean today and make sure it's not bro science.
We're going to do things a little bit differently than we normally do. Usually, we kind of just have one specific topic that we talk about. But since there are so many acronyms out there around this, we're going to set a timer for each one. All right. So for those of you listening, it's going to take about 2 minutes for each one to go through.
See, I hope somebody sits there and actually times it. Since you said about 2 minutes, it's like the Royal Rumble timer, if anybody out there watches wrestling,
it could be 2 minutes or it could be a minute and a half. You don't know, or maybe it's going to be 5 minutes and suddenly now there's another competitor. Who knows?
Yeah. So there you go. Yeah. So maybe we have an acronym. Yeah, that's the equivalent of the Undertaker at number 30. Spread it out, give it some breathing room.
I love talking about the Royal Rumble analogy. I love that sometimes there's like 35 people that enter the 30-man Rumble. Do you have like a random person that's not actually numbered but comes in
and sort of interference or
right? Yeah, it's like, oh well, look at that. There's another one. I'm surprised he's not in this. He should have been in this, but whatever. Like that's wrestling. Either way, so I have a timer set here, so the way we can try and stick to our times. If you listen to this podcast often enough, you'll notice that we actually really do stick pretty close to time. So, like we have experience with timing things out or something.
Almost like that wrestling and educational background. Make sure that we have to.
Right. You have to get to this lesson plan within today's lesson. Okay. You can't skip it over it. All right. We'll start with you, Matt. I'm going to press in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
Started off with a fun one that I always experience 48 hours post leg day most of the time. Let's go with DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness. And I say 48 hours because typically if you do a strenuous workout and you start feeling the next day, you wake up 24 hours later, it's like, I'm a little sore. And then 48 hours later, hey, that heavy squat workout, I'm crawling around my apartment and can't walk upstairs. That's delayed onset muscle soreness. And where a lot of the kind of miscommunication, misrepresentation of that, people don't really understand what that is. And I'll often hear, no, it's lactic acid. There's not, no, that's not it. It's from the micro tears as you're breaking down your muscle to rebuild it. You break it down to rebuild, to get bigger, which is why the recovery process is such an important thing that you can't just keep breaking it down. And also the idea that for it to be a good workout, that you have to be sore. Soreness, delayed onset muscle soreness does not necessarily equate a good workout. You can have a good workout and not be extremely sore. And that's a lot of times when I'm dealing with people who are beginners, the last thing I want to do if they've had never had a really good gym experience, I don't want to stick you in there and go, hey, we're going to make you really sore. Not everybody wants to be sore. Not everybody's like a broy athlete type. I know I am. Like I love being sore after a workout, but for some people they don't enjoy it. as, as Ryan sits there and goes,
Yeah.
so you can also increase delayed onset muscle soreness if you really slow down the eccentric phase of lifting, which I'll actually get into that in one of my other acronyms later. So yeah, there's your DOM. So I'm at my
I think
2-minute
with
speech.
DOMs, you should, if you're starting a new workout, you're probably going to have some DOMs like in the new phase of a workout, even if you're not a beginner.
Absolutely.
But it should not be as bad as when you were a beginner, right? If it's as bad as when you were a beginner, this means that you probably went too hard or you haven't been going hard enough.
Absolutely. Boom.
Okay. So now for the next one. I'm going to go, I'm going to do nutrition one here. I'm going to use the simplest one. It's BMI. Everybody's heard this, body mass index, which is a measure of your weight divided by your height squared, right? So, and that's, I should clarify, that's your weight in kilograms divided by your height in meters squared, right? So the correlation with that, and this is plenty of research based off of this. If your BMI exceeds 25, you're considered overweight. If your BMI exceeds 30, you're obese. And the reason why they do that is that 30 line, chronic conditions, it's like you're perfectly fine. And then 30, your ability to, I don't want to say quote unquote survive, but like you're exacerbating chronic conditions when your BMI gets over 30. Like everything becomes more difficult. And trying to maintain a weight inside that BMI range of 20 to 30 is going to be quote unquote most healthful for you. My gripe with this is it does not take into account a lot of other things, and it's supposed to be BMI plus your waist circumference. So if your BMI is high and your waist circumference is high, that's where the correlation lies. But you'll often just hear people say it's only the BMI, which isn't true. If you're had a BMI of, let's say, this isn't a good example, but let's say you had a BMI of 31, but your waist circumference was 28. That means that you probably are very lean and have a lot of muscle mass on you.
Yeah, you're probably a professional athlete. Yeah, like I love looking at the body mass index of plenty of athletes that are sub 10% body fat.
So, all right. Next one.
So I will do sort of a twofer with this. So we'll go ADL, which will lead into my next one. So ADL, your activities of daily living, which will lead into NEAT, non-exercise activity thermogenesis. And I think a lot of times people mistake their.
That was on my list.
There you go. I figured we'd have crossovers, and I was trying to get ones that wouldn't cross over purposely, but we have a tendency to think alike. Go figure. But yeah, with your activities of daily living, I oftentimes with people, especially people that are wanting to work with a weight loss program, they don't differentiate their activities of daily living from their structured exercise. Like it's great to hey, I walk a lot at work, like. For instance, your job, you do plenty of rounds, you're walking all the time. That's not your structured exercise. That's your activities of daily living. So you're burning calories while you do that. But if you're maintaining and you're looking to lose weight, if you keep doing the same thing over and over again, expect different results. That's the definition of insanity. So, it's great that you're burning calories through that non-exercise activity, but I'm a big fan, obviously, of actually doing structured workouts on top of that, not just getting those activities of daily living.
Yeah, that happens a lot. I hear a lot of people saying like, well, I do this for work. And it's like, yes, that is included. That is not the designated exercise kind of thing. You'll hear a lot of stuff with quote unquote functional fitness, where activities that actually supply towards your regular activities of daily living. But those are concentrated exercises that are supposed to help improve your ability to perform those regular activities. It's not supposed to be that regular activity is the exercise.
Right. Like I just love it. People, I walk 10,000 steps at work, which We could do a whole podcast on the whole 10,000 steps thing. But it's like, okay, cool. You walk 10,000 steps at work. And so that's your normal caloric expenditure. You're not doing anymore. And you're wondering why you're maintaining weight.
Right. I brought that up with somebody the other day about the 10,000 steps per day, because the most recent thing that I read about is probably actually closer to like 15, but that doesn't take into account regular routine exercise that you've programmed in your life. So
right, it's it's an arbitrary number. It's more better with minutes than steps.
All right, so I'm going to follow up Matt's non-exercise activity thermogenesis, or NEAT, with TDEE. Right, so that's
mark that one off my list.
Total daily energy expenditure. Okay, so that adds up a lot of different things, like NEAT that Matt was talking about, your exercise if you did it on the same day, your other acronym, which I'm also going to throw in here, BMR, your basal metabolic rate. All right.
Okay.
two for two. But your basal metabolic rate is what you would burn from a calorie standpoint if you were basically in a coma. You're laying there totally still, nothing's happening. Your brain is doing a lot of work. Your heart's doing work. Your lungs are doing a lot of work. Everything's moving inside of your body, but you physically are not moving around. That's basal metabolic rate. So then when you add in your activity, you start moving around. That's another additional activity factor on top of that, which would be your exercise, everything like that. And then you add in your NEAT, your non-exercise activity thermogenesis. All of those things combined gets you your total daily energy expenditure, your TDEE. And that's, honestly, that's all I have to say about it. That's really,
there's so much there you can add into that. There's always more fun acronyms, because we can do TEF, the thermogenic effect of food.
Oh, let me click that off. That was jackass. Well, I'm going to throw this one. Thermogenic. So the thermoenergetic effect of food is a common thing. I'm just going to start the timer.
There you go. Yeah, here, we'll give you a 2 for this is overtime. Yeah.
So this is one of the things that irritates me to a high level. Currently out there in the world, there's this thing where people try to use TEF to make foods have a negative calorie effect. All right, because it causes you eating this food, as your body digests, that's a thermic effect of food. Your body is digesting this food, creating some amount of heat, thermo. Okay. And that heat helps your body to effectively burn some tiny amount of calories. And people think that the thermic effect of food negates the calories that you just ingested. And so that creates a negative food. Like broccoli is a good example, where like a singular head of broccoli might have 5 calories in it, but it's going to cost you 3 calories to digest it or something like that. So it's really a negative calorie food, because it's so if you have a lot
and then all the energy it takes for me to fart out all that broccoli too.
Right, yeah. All of the work of your body digesting it on down but you still ingested all of those calories. That's back to what we were talking about before about the TDEE. Like when you're consuming calories, all of that gets moved into you burning them for your TDEE. So if your total daily energy expenditure exceeds your consumption of calories, then you are likely going to start losing fat.
It's almost like that whole calories in versus calories out thing. That you need to burn more energy than what you're taking in, regardless of what else you're doing.
Yeah. Oh man! All right, I'm gonna click off the TEF. I was thinking, there we go. Now I'm down to like mostly just fitness things. I don't have I fitted all of the nutritional.
Now, like I keep scribbling stuff out. Like I'm gonna have to add more that I was gonna add earlier. All right, so with the TEF, that was a nutrition one that irritates you. That there's a huge misunderstanding. That people think it's magic. Here's one that's a huge misunderstanding. That people think it's magic within fitness. EPOC. exercise post oxygen consumption. So long story short with that, it's the idea that, hey, I go work out really hard and then my body still has to work out really hard after I'm done working out to get back to baseline. Okay, awesome. Makes sense to an extent. But there are plenty of programs out there that claim that, hey, if you go burn 300 calories while you're working out, you're going to continue to burn up to 1,000 calories. Because there was one large company that I turned down a job offer for years ago. They claimed that. I was like, nah, we're good. So without naming names, because it's popular. And so if they want to sponsor this podcast, I do not want to yeah, shit on them. But yeah, like that's impossible. According to research, exercise post-oxygen consumption, you can burn up to 10% of the calories you burn during the workout. So if I go burn 300 calories during my workout, sweet, I'll burn up to an additional 30.
That's like,
ooh, so maybe that head of broccoli I just ate. Oh, but no, but that head of broccoli coupled with the thermic effect of it. Oh man, I just can sit there and do nothing now. Like,
right. As long as you work out hard enough that you have to breathe really heavily for a period of time after.
Then we're good. Yeah. Just breathe on my head of broccoli. Huh.
I will say, like on the health side of aspects, like when we consider people's energy expenditure from oxygen use or desire in, it's kind of on the other side where your lungs are working so hard to intake oxygen that you're expelling a lot of CO2, and that's where the burn comes in. But if you're at such a rate that it requires extra calories, that you probably have like some chronic obstructive pulmonary disorder. So that would be really bad for you. You don't, I'm not saying there are people out there that are surviving or perfectly fine with COPD, but one of the issues with COPD is that those people need additional calories. Otherwise their body can't keep up with the rate of their oxygen need.
So you're saying that burning more calories like that is not a good thing?
No. I highly recommend everyone try to avoid getting COPD.
I concur. I don't think that's a controversial statement to be making here. I think that's
I would say that many doctors I know would say the same. But yeah, I digress.
Oh, there's somebody out there doing like the COPD diet. Like there's.
Well, we probably do the COPD diet. Like a diet for COPD would be like a moderate to higher amount of carbohydrates and plenty of.
Yeah, I'm saying there's somebody. It's like, hey, if you get COPD, it's a good thing.
Oh yeah, it's. I'm not gonna. Nope, never mind. I'm gonna leave that one in. There's
for once, Ryan's not gonna make a controversial statement.
I'm gonna avoid that. I'm like, I'm probably getting a lot of trouble. I'm gonna avoid getting sued. All right. Anyway. So, let me. All right. Okay.
The views expressed in this podcast are those of Ryan himself and do not necessarily express the views of Franchise Nutrition and Fitness.
Anyways, so I'm going to start. We've mentioned this ad nauseum, but it's just going to be a fun one. We probably won't take very long to have to go over it. But RPE, or rate.
I knew I was going to do that one next to try to get ahead of you.
It's the very top thing on my list. Is the first thing I think about. So your rate of perceived exertion, it used to be done on a scale of 12, but now they've changed it to be a scale of 10, which is much more manageable for people. But let's say 10 is your maximal effort and 1 is minimal effort. So back to the BMR that we mentioned before, 1 would be like sitting up, right? So like you haven't done a ton of work. 10 would be like you're sprinting. Okay, so that's the variance of a regular body movement kind of phase, like very minimal effort to maximal effort on a 10. But when it comes to weightlifting and working out, it's always the rate of perceived exertion, right? So perceived changes every day. Currently, I have another fun head cold. So my perceived exertion is way different than when I am not sick. So, for example, I will be doing squats later, and I will not be trying to maximize my number. I'm just going to be maximizing my effort. That makes sense. So my total rate, we talked about it before on a podcast about when you're sick. It is going to probably be 80% of my typical maximal effort will be my max set today at the most.
Yeah, there's so many factors that go into that. Yeah, how much sleep you've had, how how hydrated you are, if you're feeling sick or not, when's the last time you ate. Yeah, there's a million different things that it's not super scientific with the rate of perceived exertion, but it is super personalized, which I like.
Yeah. So look at that, less than 2 minutes. Boom.
All right, so you said rate of perceived exertion. You talked about the original 6 through 20 scale and how that would make a lot of sense to a whole lot of people.
Oh, sorry,
so that will
12.
You said 12, yeah, but now I lost my train of thought. No, there was some transition. So this will lead into my next one, which is RHR, resting heart rate, because that's what that scale was based off of. That 6 through 20, it was, hey, if you take 60, good resting heart rate, boom, chop the 0 off. 200, that's a maximal heart rate for somebody. Chop the 0 off. 6 to 20 was your scale. So resting heart rate. Yeah, 200 is not my max heart rate. So get me off the treadmill if I'm at 200. But resting heart rate is exactly what it sounds like. It's your heart rate at rest. And I think a lot of times people will track that at not the best time. They'll go, this is my resting heart rate. Resting heart rate, soon first thing you wake up in the morning, sit up, take that resting heart rate. That's an actual accurate resting heart rate. Or look at your watch, or there's 5 million different ways to do it now without having an account. So RHR.
There's other thing in there too, like you can check your temperature. Sometimes that gives you a good indicator of how much your heart rate is going. So it's one
Absolutely.
of the things, a fever, like, that increases your heart rate. Not good for you. I control fever. But so good, nice one. I am going to go back to another thing we've talked about before. And again, it's probably, I'm going to go 2 of them. So there's HIIT, 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 which is high intensity interval training.
I had that written down, but I scratched it out because I was like, we've talked about it ad nauseum.
And then there's also, you'll see LISS out there, which is low intensity, steady state exercise, right? So back to the running analogy, it's the easiest one. There was a man, I can't remember his first name, but his last name was Fartlick. And he did this thing where you would sprint for 30 seconds to a minute, and then you would jog or walk for 30 seconds to a minute.
Well, fartlek training actually wasn't timed, if I remember correctly. Like that's the difference between fartlek training and interval training, or high intensity interval training, is what I should say.
Yeah, well, I'm just like for a run, right. Like if you're running, you time it out because the distance is going to be different for each person. So like if you're doing it as like a team effort, you time it. But that's a different discussion. But with high intensity interval training, it's different because it's a shorter bouts. Like it's like 30 seconds, 10 seconds, 30 seconds, 10 seconds. You can get through like a whole workout in 4 minutes. We talked about this before. And then whereas low intensity steady state is kind of just like a consistent jog for X amount of time. And there are benefits to both. For example, when you are sick, it's probably going to be easier to do low intensity steady state things versus when you are well, you're probably going to be, I don't want to say it's easy, but it would be easier to do HIIT when you are well versus than when you are sick, right? So 2 different dichotomies, but you're going to get a similar effect in the amount of calories burned and cardiopulmonary exercise doing both.
Yeah, I don't think you're probably feeling like you want to get a good Tabata working out today. Like,
I might, like I said, like I don't even know how heavy I'm going to go on squats today. Should have done this the other day when I wasn't feeling like crap. But anyways, those are 2 more acronyms. Oops, looks like we went over our time, and so I had to record this real quick so that we can drop it in here and finish this. This is going to end up being a 2-part episode, so we'll pick up back here next week as we continue our journey down the acronyms of nutrition and fitness that you might see out there. If you haven't already, gone over to franchisenutritionandfitness.com, sign up for your free meet and greet. You can also send us a message about any of our previous episodes or this episode. Go back and listen to all the other episodes, share them with your family and friends. Like we say every week, maximize every bite, maximize every rep.